I know it's hard to believe I have 25 years of experience in DC because I look so young. Yes, quick around the uptake. I started when I was 12, like most of the people you'll be meeting with. And no, actually, I started straight after college, worked on Capitol Hill for 3 different members of Congress, and was a legislative assistant, legislative director, and chief of staff. So I tell you that just so that you know where I come at advocacy from. I was the person being advocated at. And I thought to myself, well, if people had a little bit more expertise in how to do it, you would get more of what you wanted out of your elected officials, and there would be world peace. So that's my plan. The other important thing you need to know about me is a very important personage in Washington, D.C. Do you all know the first dog? President's dog, Bo? My dog went to the same dog trainer that Bo went to. So there you go. I know, you can applaud that. He's also very badly trained, so I expect some international incident at some point. All right, so why your voice matters, why it's so important that you're here this week, and I really appreciate the time everyone's taken out of their schedules to come to Washington, D.C. I apologize for the weather, it's not our fault. But you're here, and that's fabulous. And I want to start with some ideas about why your voice matters. So why doesn't someone, I want to hear people tell me what they think influences legislators. And if you give me something, some word, it doesn't even have to relate in any way to a question, you will get a fabulous prize, all right? So what are some of the things that you think influence legislators? Money. Oh, did someone say money? That's so shocking. All right, money. What else? Votes. What was that? Awareness. Constituents. Yes, I think all of these things may be true. But let me ask: how many of you are influenced by your spouse in any way? All the guys are like, and the ladies are like, I don't know. Okay, so one of the things I would say, and the first one on this list, is their friends and family. And part of their family is I consider their staff to be part of their family, and so we'll talk a little bit about how you talk to staff. But their friends and family are pretty influential, so to the extent that in your support networks, the people you work with, you can figure out if they've got those kinds of connections. I think that makes sense. Their policy interests and passions. So this is a pretty important one because every elected official comes to Washington, D.C. to work on some issue that he or she loves. And sometimes it's not health related. No, it should be. But sometimes it might be transportation or technology or agriculture or animal welfare. I don't know, but it could be any number of things. And part of your job as a good advocate is to know when you walk in the door some of the things that that legislator you're speaking to is interested in. Not just in terms of your own bills, which I think is obviously the most important, but how they see the world, how they look at the political spectrum. And so I'll talk about that in just a minute, some quick things that you can do. The media is kind of influential, so if you have, it doesn't have to always be the Washington Post or the New York Times. It can be those small newspapers in your district. So if you have opportunities to put letters to the editor and such in there. If you have your own newsletter, you are also the media. So you can always ask a legislator or a staff person to submit an article for that. But most important, as people were saying, were their constituents. And the reason why I say this, and I don't focus a lot on money, is because, first of all, I'm never going to erase everyone's skepticism about money in the political process. But what I will tell you is that money is not as important in the day-to-day decisions as you think it is. The number one thing any legislator is thinking when you're walking in the door is, are you from the district? Or do you represent people from the district? And that's your main avenue of entrance into the office. That's what they find really the most valuable. And my colleagues from Advocacy Associates, our company, managed to get you all of your meetings because you are constituents. That was the first thing that they asked. So that is really the most important thing, your power as grassroots. So again, I know I'm not going to erase some of your skepticism, but can we all agree that there's another path, the grassroots advocacy path, and you are well on it? So everyone, if you nod your heads, I'll stop talking about the uncomfortable subject of money. All right, constituents, most important, and really the thing that you should be focusing on as you're thinking about your meetings. So you're going to pick up your itineraries after this session, and you also have access to the app. There's an itinerary app, which is just about the coolest thing ever. And then my colleagues at the desk, Katie and Kirsten, will be able to answer any questions for you. But I want to make sure that I got some initial things answered so that we can dispense with some of those. So you'll get a piece of paper that looks like this, and naturally you can see it very easily up here. It has your list of all the meetings. You've been divided into groups based on your states, based on your, in some cases, regions, based on your constituency and your connections with those particular legislative offices. When you pick this up, your meeting times and everything will be on here. In a few cases, it will say TBD, and that means that we have not yet gotten that meeting, but trust me, Katie will. So that meeting will be, don't worry, that meeting will be gotten. She, through our app and through just plain old-fashioned cell phone service, she will let you know, they will let you know if they get a meeting or if meetings have changed, okay? So if you see TBD, don't be concerned about that. You can always check in with them and see where we are on that meeting, but that's what that means. The app, when you get your itineraries, you'll have the access information for your app. And you can also look at the meetings there, and there's also on this itinerary instructions for the app. So when you pick this up, you'll have all the details on that you would like, and probably some details that you don't want. All right, in order of time, this is what the meetings are set in as time order. When you look at those times, I just want to make sure, we did our best to avoid making you go back and forth between the Senate and the House. That was like a main consideration. Sometimes the senators and congressmen don't want to schedule along our timeline. So, but do know that we really made an effort. And if it looks like there's a close meeting, you'll see that we know the Hill pretty well. So if the meeting's pretty short and we know that the next building is pretty close, then we may have scheduled you very tight. If for some reason your meeting goes over or you can't get to your next meeting, you can first of all work up in your group who might go on to the next meeting if there's other people who can go. Or, just give us a call and we'll let the other office know that you're running late, and it's fine. Those things do happen, and they're certainly cognizant of that. What to do if something goes wrong? Katie Lozier in my office, her phone number is on this piece of paper. It's also on the app. It's also about to be read to you. Are you ready? It is 203-770-6439. Everyone got that? All right. Remember that she's the contact for everyone who's having some problem tomorrow, some emergency. So, while you want to be nice, don't necessarily call and say, hey, how's it going? She's definitely working with a lot of people. Again, all your questions about this can be answered by Katie or Kirsten when you go and pick up the schedules, and they're fabulous. So, and if they look a little bit like, it's because they've scheduled hundreds of meetings for you guys. So, give them a pat and give them applause and tell them they're wonderful. All right. You'll have a map in your packet too, and there's also one in your really cool spiral-bound book that's a much prettier map. And on the app, there's also a mapping feature. So we're really trying to make sure you feel comfortable in terms of getting around. So I want to talk for just a minute about some of the things that you bring to the policy table. How many people have been on this kind of journey before? How many people have come to meetings? Okay, good, a fair number of you. So if you have someone next to you who did not raise their hand, remember that they might be feeling a little nervous, and you can, help them along. But these are some of the things that I wanted to make sure you know. When you go into the office, this is what the staff are wondering. They want to know your story, right? They want to know how the crazy things that happen in Washington, D.C. connect back to the people that they represent. So when you say something like, will you co-sponsor HR 971, they want to know how that specific thing relates to the people that they represent in the district. And that's all about your story. And I'll talk quickly about a couple things you can do to develop your story. They also want to know why the asks are important to you. And again, that ties back to your story. And then they want to know how to find you. You're not going to be able to relay everything you know about rare diseases into their heads, right? And frankly, by virtue of the fact that it is a rare disease, they may not know what it is. They may not know, what you're talking about. They may not know some of the things that you're struggling with. So they need to know how to find you, so that when the congressman is running down to the floor and says, hey, I can't remember if I'm for H.R. 971 or against it, they'll say, hey, you're for it. And then he or she will go down and vote that particular way, which does happen, which is fun. All right. So these are the key things. One time I did actually mistake. It was one of these where a no meant no, or no meant yes and a yes meant no, and it was like all confusing. So the congressman called and he said, hey, how am I supposed to vote on this? And I said no, but it was supposed to be yes. So he got there and he's like, God, she seemed really sure, so he voted the wrong way. And then I was like, oh, it was awful, and we corrected it and everything was fine. But after that, whenever he was running down to the floor to vote and I'd tell him how to vote, he'd say, are you sure? So we had a lot of fun with that. To his credit, he trusted me after that. All right, so what you don't need to stress about. This is how a bill becomes a law, how our budget process works, although apparently we don't do that anymore. We just kind of make stuff up. But you don't need to worry about this. You don't need to, it's good to know, and if you have a handle on it, great. But in terms of FY, if you're not 100% sure which fiscal year it is, if you're not 100% sure which subcommittee the appropriations goes through, if you're not 100% sure what the sequestration is and what Code 672 and Code 439 does, all you need to do is say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. So let's practice that. Are you ready, everyone? I don't know, but I'll get back to you. All right, and then what do? Yeah, people skip that, right? Okay. But it's good to know this, and you have some information about the legislative process in your booklet, but again, your story is what's most important. So don't feel intimidated or scared if you can't remember all of that. So to help you, though, to sort of get ready for your meetings, I wanted to give you the 4 things to know before walking in the door. And they are what you want, who you're talking to, how to talk to them, and then how to follow up. And I should mention, if anyone wants to take pictures of these screens so that you can, I'm going to give you some formulas and some fill in the blank kind of things. Feel free to do that. You could take the picture of me on the screen with the airbrush, but that'd be a little weird, but you could. So these are 4 things that you really need to know. So the first one is, what do you want? And this is your ask. And you've heard a lot about some of the asks. As mentioned earlier, it needs to be an ask. It needs to be it's like Jeopardy. It needs to be in the form of a question. Because when you ask them something, it switches the little switch in their head that says, oh my gosh, you're asking me for something, I have to pay attention. If you walk in the office and you focus too much on education, which you do certainly want them to be educated on your situation, but when you focus on that, then they can say things like, oh, I certainly agree that, legislation supporting those who have rare diseases is very important, and that, as we enter into the 21st century to become the economic engine of growth and opportunity and blah, blah. Has anyone heard this speech before? The reason why sometimes that happens is because you didn't say, will you co-sponsor bill such and such? And a lot of times you'll say that, and a lot of times they'll say, I don't know, or some other equally nondescript answer, which is fine. You'll say, great, I'm going to follow up with you in a couple of weeks to see if you'll co-sponsor this bill. But an ask, an actual ask. So let's practice the ask for the Open Act, since it's an easy one, all right? So everyone, are you ready? You're going to repeat after me. Congressman, will you co-sponsor? H.R. 971, the Open Act. H.R. 971, the Open Act. Okay, now there's people in the back who are like, will you co-sponsor? I need to hear it loud and proud. Are you ready? Congressman. Will you co-sponsor? H.R. 971, the Open Act. H.R. 971, the Open Act. Darn it. I have to add that. Sometimes I do that, but you're going to put actual words around this, right? You're not going to walk in the office and say, well, you co-sponsor. We have a story to tell. But it's that ask. It's got to be an ask like that. And you're going to have, we're trying to have you to 2 asks per meeting because you do have a big list of things. You certainly want to mention some of the others and make sure they have the handouts in some of the others, but it can be a little intimidating when you go into an office. I know from the staffer's perspective, and people would say, I want this, and I want a pony, and I want the, I'm like, okay. So you're going to pick 2, and when you get into your groups, you can decide which ones are the best ones for each office based on where the legislator is, what their viewpoints are, and I'll show you in a minute how to look up some of that very quickly. So that's what you want. Just make sure you make that ask, and you're going to narrow it down to 2 asks per office. And again, if you ask a senator about HR 971 and they say, oh, that's a House bill, like life goes on, you know, you say, oh, okay, well, we're looking for a Senate sponsor for that. So don't, you know, I know sometimes that's a little intimidating, but it seems like a lot of you have done this before, so you're pretty knowledgeable about that. I want to make a quick note about talking to staff because I know a lot of people, a lot of your meetings are going to be with staff. So first of all, I want you to remember that it's better to meet with the staff and the legislator. And I know people rarely believe this, but the staff people are the ones who are making the day-to-day decisions. You saw in this panel, the staff people are the ones who know a lot about the bills and have worked on them for a long time. So the staff people are the ones who you really want to build that long-term relationship. It's nice to have a meeting with the legislator, you know, you get to do the grip and grin, and they go, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Which is nice, you know, great, but you're going to get more time and more expertise with the staff person, and they really are the eyes and ears of the member. The main difference in talking with them is pronouns. Instead of saying to a legislator, will you co-sponsor this bill, you say, will your boss co-sponsor this bill? Will you support this appropriation? Will your boss support this appropriation? The staff people are really like appendages of the legislator, and you know, you can trust them to be the ones who understand the legislator's view. So that's the main difference. Also, as I mentioned, be emotionally prepared that they're very young. And what's going to happen is you're going to go up to the hill, and then you're going to come back and be like, my God, they were so young. I'm like, yes, I told you. And I say that not just because I'm getting older, it's because they really are young. All right, so that's who you're talking to. Just the quick things as you think about who you're talking to know before the meeting. I think there's 3 things that you really should know. You don't have to know all these details, but just 3 quick things. Number 1 is their committee assignments. So if you know what committee they're on, you get a really strong sense of some of the things that they are interested in. So if they are on the agriculture committee, they're interested in agriculture. And I'm not saying you have to talk about agriculture, but it's valuable to know that going in the door. And you can also look up, if you want to get extra credit, you can look up some of the subcommittees that they're on. But as long as you know the main full committee and just like what it does, that's a great place to start because it will give you some ideas. Their policy interests. Best way to do that is to go to house.gov and senate.gov and read their issues tab. There's usually something that says issues or legislation, and that tells you what kinds of issues they talk about, just even beyond healthcare, and how they talk about things. So that gives you some clues onto the next one, which is where they are in the political spectrum. Because knowing that when you go in, you're going to have your messages and your story that you want to tell, but you may shift it a little bit, right, for a more conservative member versus a more liberal member. And these are bipartisan issues, obviously. We've heard a lot about that. But how you approach it just might shift a little based on the kind of audience that you're talking to. So look up their committee assignments, look up their policy interests, that's the issue tabs on the House website, and then know a little bit about where they are in the political spectrum. All right, and these are some of your resources that I just mentioned. Again, you're welcome to take a picture of this. The scorecard is in the actual spiral-bound book. There's also biographical information on the app, so you can really just quickly look through that. Senators, House bills introduced. A bonus is votesmart.org, and that's for your information about the newer members if you don't get a lot of information from their website. So votesmart.org. All right, for talking to them, I want you to use the spit technique. I do not want you to spit on your legislators. It's tempting sometimes, but SPIT is an acronym, and it stands for Specific, Personal, Informative, and Timely. So you want to be specific again in asking for what you want. You want to tell that personal story, and that's what really makes a difference in what you're here for. I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll wrap up. So the personal story, when I worked on Capitol Hill, I worked on animal welfare issues, and we used to get postcards about legislation to make it a federal crime to steal someone's pet from a backyard and sell it to a research facility. So recognizing that research facilities are important, is anyone actually for the stealing of pets and their subsequent? Because there's always one, it's like, oh, that dog barks. So we got postcards about it, and I thought, okay, well, this is important, I want to do something about it, but the postcards didn't relay an incredible amount of importance. But then I got a letter from a woman in the district, and I'm reading it, and she said her pet had been stolen, and she sent a picture. It was a little Labrador Retriever puppy, and then the kicker came because she said she had kids, and she asked how was she supposed to tell her kids what happened to the puppy, and I was like, I don't know. Oh my God, I had to pass this bill right now. And that was where the personal story came into play. So if you can work puppies into that message, I think that would be really good. I is for informative, so some background on your situation, what you know about the rest of the people who are dealing with your condition. Some of those numbers, we talked about the 7,000 number. So some of that information is important and timely. Now's a great time to be here because of where we are in the appropriations process. So you've got that one down. I'm just going to, if you want to take a picture of this, this is the message formula that you can use for your meetings, and I'm going to wrap up in 1 minute. Is that okay? Is 1 minute okay? Okay, good. So feel free to take a picture of this. This is a 7-point plan that you can use to set up your meetings, and I'm also happy to give it to you in another format. All right, so some quick points, because I know that sometimes we have some concerns going into these meetings. Talking to legislators with whom you disagree. Anyone disagree with their legislators every once in a while? All right, agree to disagree is a great thing to practice. Also try to get them to a smaller yes, like will you come and visit us in the district? That's a great question to ask. But if you hate them and they're truly awful and you never want to speak to them again, still go visit them, because at least you are taking up their time, right? Time they could be using to do horrible things to other people. All right, legislators and staff will be mean to people of a different party. Legislators are more interested in constituency than party. We talked about that. I don't want to look foolish. Again, they don't expect you to be policy experts. You're worried that you'll say something that will ruin it for everyone else. This rarely happens, except I once saw someone drink 4 glasses of wine at a reception and then yell at the legislator. So don't do that. Otherwise, it won't happen. But I know you're going to hear a lot of information. You're just going to have a fabulous time on Capitol Hill. And to make sure that you take that fabulous time home, I'm going to wrap up by asking you to take an effective advocacy pledge. So are you ready? Right hands up or left? I don't want to be handist, whichever you feel is. Okay, I. State your name here. Did anyone say their name? Promise to communicate with my legislators this week, next month, the following month, the month after that, and on until the end of time, or until death do us part. Great, now you're married to them, so that's good. Thank you, and we'll be ready to answer questions.